Hi, guys. Welcome to Once in a Wild, where every once in a while we have meaningful conversations with meaningful people. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. So, today we are talking with Bramble Roots, aka Kaj. And first of all, where are you located?
I'm in St. Louis,
That's right.
Missouri.
Okay, cool. So, do we have a time difference?
We do, because I'm in Central Time, and I think you're on Eastern, right?
Yes. I don't know. Time isn't real. Let's see. So we've actually never even met before, which is pretty crazy. And I want to give our listeners a little bit of background on that. So this is actually our first time meeting. So everybody's seeing that real time, which I think is cool personally. One thing that's really significant about you and your profile is that both of us are like OGs from back in the day. And I was making notes last night and looking through your stuff and kind of doing this like blast through the past thing to collect questions and thoughts to talk to you about. And I feel like, tell me if you feel this way too. Back in the day when there was like nobody around and nobody was using social media, you just knew about other people through the grapevine. And there were
Yeah.
very few people I knew about. I knew about your name, Avani, because she was raging at
Mhm.
the time. I knew about Rolly. I knew
Mhm.
about one other person in my state who I don't even think is in business anymore. That was pretty much it. And I know my perspective is limited. Obviously, other people knew about other people based on where they're at. But I was curious if you had the same experience.
At first, when I was just like hustling on the side and doing locks was not my full-time job,
Yeah.
I was in a really isolated area. I started off in
Yeah.
Alaska. So that
Oh,
was
nice.
very much like a Craigslist type thing.
I used to use Craigslist too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah, so it hit me up in the gig section of Craigslist. But when I came down to Missouri, probably in about like 2016,
Okay.
I thought to myself, maybe I should try to pursue doing hair more full
Mm,
time. But the thing about it was, I always felt decently well connected with other people and
okay.
other locticians online. But a lot of it was siloed off in
Mm,
private groups in forums. So there
I
was
agree.
Dreadlock Truth as a forum, hair extension forum where people
Yeah.
were doing a lot of synths. There was like private, like secret Facebook groups. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the most like shining moments in my career was being invited to Avani's like
Oh, that's
secret
so
Facebook
cool.
group. And there people were doing like Hollywood hair for locks.
Yeah.
And then the guy who did Justin Bieber's locks was in that group.
That's
And
crazy.
so that's where I did a lot of like my
Yeah.
networking and also like skill sharing and bouncing
Mm,
ideas off one another. But it wasn't so much client facing.
okay.
I think it's relatively recent where all of us are out here talking specifically to clients rather than professionals. I know that
Yeah.
there were a lot of like free form forward communities.
I just think it's an era of the internet related to this industry that a lot of people don't know about. I remember back in the day, I was printing out physical flyers,
Yeah.
and I was paper, people, paper. You know what I mean? And I was printing them at the library and putting them, God knows where. Wow, blast from the
Oh
past,
yeah.
different
And
times.
I think like the biggest repository of information for me trying to learn how to do locks was actually on LiveJournal.
Oh,
Gosh, that's so
wow.
long.
Are we
2009.
like majorly dating ourselves right now? Oh,
Yeah.
Life Journal. Wow.
Yeah. And I think that has somewhat contributed to a little bit of my
Mm,
frustration
mm,
nowadays
yeah.
with people wanting to get into the industry, not
Yes.
because I feel threatened or anything
Right.
like that, because I have way more business, way more clientele than even my two hands can handle.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of people who don't have that like crate digging
I
mentality when it
agree.
comes to learning new like techniques
Yeah.
and talking and networking with other professionals and gaining mentorship. Because on LiveJournal, we were just sharing videos from Russia
Yep.
in 420p or 1 or 480p.
Yes.
They were filmed on, gosh, my favorite video was like filmed in Russia with no subtitles and it wasn't in English and it was
Wow.
demonstrated on Barbie dolls, but it was at night with this grainy webcam.
This is amazing. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
so we called the crochet technique back then Russian dreads.
I know
And everyone was
exactly
like,
what you're talking
"Oh,
about.
yeah, have you figured out Russian dreads yet?" And
Yeah.
then one person from Australia, she was just
Mhm.
like, "I think I figured it out, guys." And she had the first like high quality lit English language video of that, other than like Collins dreads on YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You need to write this stuff down. I feel like this is lore that people need to know. Wow. So
Yeah.
wild. So wild. That's amazing. Let me go off my path here for a second just because I'm curious.
Mhm.
Are you originally from Alaska?
Yeah,
Ok
I wasn't born in Alaska. I was born in Hawaii.
okay.
I've been in Alaska since infancy, so elementary, middle, high school. I have 2 degrees from University of Alaska. I'm just from Alaska.
And how long did you end up doing anything in the lock industry in Alaska?
I think I was doing it. My first head that wasn't myself, I think was in 2012.
Ni
I was ultimately in my last stage of being in Alaska working as a web developer and graphic designer
Mm,
at a communications and public relations firm. And so on the evenings and weekends, I would go around and go to people's houses and do their locks in their kitchens or on their
right.
couches because I lived in a farm town, probably about an
Okay.
hour away, but my actual office job was in the city where more
Okay.
people live. So that's how I had access to people to try these new things out on.
Yeah.
It never was like an aspiration of mine
Yeah.
very much, but because I have locks, a lot of people would ask me,
Right.
"Hey, who does your hair?" Wait, it's me. Yeah.
I feel like that's still one of the biggest networking tools with clients, if you will, is just being out and about. Who does your hair? I do. And that's just a tried and true thing that'll never go away. So that's really cool. At that time, did the lock community feel pretty sparse in Alaska? And do you feel like it's more popular there now?
Back then, it wasn't much of a thing, and I would
Mm,
still actually wager to saying that it's not much of a thing now. So then it ended up being a thing where, like, I just found somebody to start them. I think she gave me probably 130 back-combed locks that were,
whoa.
like, twisted down with beeswax and petroleum.
Oh my god. Another blast
Yeah.
from the past?
And that was just not really my aspiration for having locks. I knew that even though the ends may not have been what I wanted to, both like texture wise with the integrity of the hair, but also like technique and products,
Mm,
even though it wouldn't be perfect, maybe my new growth would be good. The problem with that is they were just way too small. So I
okay.
ended up when in my first year of college taking pairs of them in groups of like twos and threes
Good
and
call.
just combining them together
Yeah.
into just like backcomb puffs. And then I was like, I guess this is my life now. And
Wow.
everyone said trust the process. So yeah, ironically, I don't maintain my hair.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even been twisted since 2015.
It's a
Yeah,
beautiful
back when I was
thing.
in college.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. I liked what you touched on about, like, people coming into the industry. No shade, no gatekeeping, that's not what we're saying, but we're just saying there is a different level of appreciation for the absolute wasteland of nothingness that we came from what it is now. I feel like it's so easy now, not only
Yeah.
with things being popularized, but with, like you said, modern social media and the tools that we have. It's so much easier now. Not that way in the beginning at all. And a lot of us were just flying blind and just eating every little crumb of information we could find. And when you brought up the Russian technique and the Barbie, I was like, wow, because that's what got me started. And then I had a young child at the time. So I was like, she has dolls and Barbies. I'm going to watch this video of this Russian gal and I'm going to do, and that's how I got hooked and whatnot. So
Yeah.
this is just lore that people just don't know about, and I do think I agree with you. I think there's a level of appreciation that comes with that for how far that's come. That's
For
amazing.
sure. Yeah, it's interesting to hear where people who started back then learned their techniques from,
Right,
because in the West, I think a lot of us attributed it to either a Russian technique
right.
or even sometimes we would hear like Thai technique.
Mm,
Some people learned from another person,
yeah,
some people learned online.
right.
So it was definitely, we were coming from quite a few different funnels.
Yeah,
And then synthesizing information from certain techniques or individuals or things we've seen. And then also coming back and filming our terrible quality videos and then showing the rest of
I
our
know.
friends.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and I think now it's nice that you can just find information, but
So
it doesn't
much.
have the same level of curiosity to it.
I remember when I started out pre-crochet, no one was using that here in the US. What was available to you was latch hooks. Oh my gosh, the bastardly things we did with latch hooks and back combing and flipping things and then needle felting. I remember a
Yeah.
lot of people posting videos and we would watch crafters, like early DIY crafter videos of needle felting and then start transferring that.
Yeah.
Now, I love hearing about where you learned and what you saw. The next thing I remember is I remember a lot of Chris McDread getting in the mix
Mhm.
and bringing crochet over, and it was like, pew, this bomb went off that just everybody jumped on, and then I was lucky enough to find an apprenticeship, very informal, and I already had a knowledge base like yours from my own curiosity and my own locks, and from being turned away from so many people, and from having beeswax threads that were backcombed and just coated in so much stuff and gunk, and so I'm just really glad that you found your way, and look at the industry now. What a
Mhm.
wild ride. That's absolutely
Yeah,
nuts. Wow,
absolutely.
crazy.
And I think back then, the value that the virality of Chris McDread's video was is that it brought the utility of the crochet
Mm,
method to the widest possible audience.
absolutely.
I just happened to be at the right place at the right time when the Chris McDread video went
Right.
viral because St. Louis is a historically Black city.
Right.
Um, yeah, nowadays I believe it's 47% Black and 48% white.
Really?
But yeah, so people were running around saying, "Where can I get this?" And I live in Asia. I don't know guys. But he reached out to me and he said, "Is it okay if I make a video
Right.
about you and send people to
Yeah.
you?"
I remember finding an email buried somewhere on YouTube for Chris McDread and just biting the bullet and messaging him and saying, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I'm learning this technique too." Yada. I didn't even know he would ever answer me. And then same thing, developed a relationship. And wow, what a crazy ride. And that have everyone can have their opinions about Chris now, as many people do, but we
Yes.
do have to pause and give that credit of he really saw that void and
Yeah.
filled it and really distributed a lot of people. It sounds like your way and my way.
Sometimes I think it's just such a small
It
microcosm
is.
in the universe of not just hair, but just things,
Yeah.
right? Things that feel so astronomical, so monumental, interpersonal relationships that fail, or certain social
Yeah.
dynamics in our industry. It can feel so big and so
Oh,
insurmountable
tell
at the
me about
time,
it.
but nobody knows who we are. And that's okay. I like it that way.
I like it that way too. And I'm glad you say that because sometimes I feel very protective over that smallness. And I feel like that can come across as maybe, I don't know, gatekeepy, or maybe somebody thinks I'm being shitty or something. But I just feel protective over that smallness, like in a mama bear way.
That's why I love focusing my clients and my services hyper locally. I don't love it when people travel from far away,
Mm,
and my books have been closed for quite some time now
right.
because I love cultivating the relationship between me and the client
Mm, yeah.
because this is not a microwave hairstyle. The work that I do is, even though you can get some pretty dramatic before and afters, what we do is more akin to physical therapy rather than
I
plastic
agree.
surgery. So it takes mutual effort over long periods of time to yield results. You can have the best set of starter locks in the world, but it doesn't change the fact that they're only 1 day
Right.
old. And it doesn't change the fact that it's going to take at least 3 or more years for them to settle into their final shape
Mm,
and character. And so that's really hard to explain to people. So I'd rather just hang out with my
yeah.
little friend connections here
Yeah.
and all their friends and all the people that they referred who were able to see their hair live time.
Right.
And so they are already prepared for what the journey may entail.
And you're correct because that's another one of those just age-old timeless referral is someone seeing someone else firsthand and how well their hair is doing, and they can ask them all the nitty-gritty questions and touch it and feel it, and a
Right.
recommendation from a friend or a neighbor is gonna be it's gonna go so far. What services are you offering right now? Because I know that you do a lot. You do have a
Yeah.
variety.
Last time I calculated about 40% of my clients have sister locks or
Oh,
micro locks.
cool.
Yeah. And so when I first came to St. Louis, all I was doing was crochet method. I was living in a house with five other people, four other people, maybe to begin with. I was working reception at a hair salon that I knew that I had researched and found in Alaska because it was on the forefront of deregulating natural hair care services and me not possessing a license at that time.
Okay.
I just wanted to be close to that to see what was going on, what the hair industry was like professionally, because I'm not from here.
Right.
And yeah, I just got a part-time reception job at this salon. And when people would call and ask for instant locks because of that dang viral video,
Right?
the owner's, I don't know what those are. I'm like, I can do
I'll
it.
tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would work 3 days behind the desk and then 3 days on the salon floor.
Wow.
The owner of the salon I was working at was actually the one that was pushing legislation and working with, I guess, like maybe lobbying groups
Mm,
to deregulate natural hair care services in the state of Missouri. So it was her name on the Missouri State
mm,
Supreme Court
that's
dockets.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that being close to her, I would have the most up to date and accurate
Good.
information.
I can tell we have such similar stories because I was doing this unlicensed for so long and things have changed state by state and it's a whole mess. I couldn't even tell you what every single state's laws are, not to
Right.
mention like the Crown Act and all that stuff. I remember calling my local Cosmo board and being like, "Hey, I'm doing this. I'd like to be above board." And they were like, "We have no idea what you're talking about. Literally have no clue what I was talking about." So
Yeah.
I like you and I find that very interesting. I went and looked up who was on the board, found who was around me, and I had lunch with one of the women on the board and was like, "Can you please
Wow.
tell me what's going on?" So very similar experience to you as I was like, I know I love this. I know I'm going to do this long term. I want to be close to, like you said, the leading
Mhm.
edge of what's going on here. And I'm good friends with that person to this day. And she was like, here's the
Yeah.
history. Here's where we're at right now. Here's what might come in the future. Here's the best thing for you to do. So I just think it's cool that you and I had that really grassroots curiosity to be like, what's going on? Who's the guy? Who knows?
Right.
So I can be close to that person. And they welcomed you with open arms and they put you on the floor. And
Yeah, and so that shop almost exclusively dealt in sister locks. So I was the
wow.
odd one out because it was a natural hair specific salon. It was by and large very overwhelmingly locks only,
Mm,
but most of the locks themselves were sister locks, and I didn't have that skill set.
gotcha.
So I saved some money and I ended up going to the sister locks class in April 2017, I believe, maybe sometime in 2017.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, and then it took off from there. So when you first got started, were you still doing primarily crochet or were you doing 50-50? Were they bringing in clients for you? How did that lay out?
So I was terrified to do sister locks because the time and the
Yeah.
valuation and the monetary investment was so much higher than the carefree hippie culture,
Yes. So
the larger crochet style traditional locks. And so because of that, even though I had taken the Sister Locks training and I had joined Sister Locks professionals groups like on Facebook and whatnot, the issue was I was so afraid of messing up someone's hair.
right.
So I don't think I did anyone's Sister Locks for about a year after training.
Okay.
So I was really just focused on crochet only
Mm,
because I was terrified of messing up someone's micro locks.
yeah. I think that's valid. And I think going back to what we were touching on about the difference between people that have been around a long time and the kind of the newer wave, if you will, of locticians that are incoming, not as much fear. I was
Yeah.
terrified. There's just not as much fear. And I feel like sometimes the fear is a little healthy. Maybe we
Yeah.
should have a little more fear in there. But
It
yeah,
depends on your target market too, because if you're doing like working on someone's couch, doing the DIY whoop
exactly.
crowd, of course,
Exactly.
the stakes are much, much lower.
Right.
Those people were a whole lot different. They were
Mm,
people who were often in professional positions.
I
It's
mean,
a
anything.
completely different demographic of what is considered professional. Their ideas and expectations and their needs for
Mm,
the appearance of their hair are completely different than what I was used to working in Alaska,
right.
where the culture for almost everybody is very much granola.
Yes. For the audience, let them know the difference between traditional dreadlocks or whatever terminology you prefer, sister locks and micro locks, because I think
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Sister
right.
Locks is a registered trademark. It's a brand name and a corporation that's headquartered in California. And the thing about the Sister Locks brand name is they offer a 4-day training to learn how to do
Wow.
Sister Locks. But Sister Locks legally is considered a system. And so just because you have small locks doesn't necessarily mean that you have sister locks. Some people
Mm,
who have sister locks take great pride in this difference, but for others, it's less consequential. The main things
interesting.
to remember is that the Sister Lock system mandates that all the practitioners take the Sister Locks 4-day training. The other thing is that they mandate that you have a 3-part installation process.
Okay.
The first part being a like consultation where you receive several rows of test locks actually
Oh,
to test out different interlocking styles to see how your hair responds to each type of
wow.
interlocking. And then observing that, seeing how it ages, and then using that information to later have your installation. Then the second appointment is the establishment. The establishment itself can probably take between 1 and 2 days, or
Right.
if you're just starting out, even more. And that's where you get what Sister Locks Corporation recommends, probably 400 to 450 locks.
Woo!
So they actually have diagrams and charts in their training materials that mandate different sections of the head. So all of that is part of the Sister Locks package.
Okay.
And they have their own shampoos, they have their own moisturizers. And so that's what Sister Locks is.
Yeah.
So all Sister Locks are micro locks.
Okay.
They're
This
all
makes
small.
sense.
But not all micro locks are Sister Locks, just like how all Coca-Cola is soda, but not all soda is Coca-Cola.
That makes
Coca-Cola is a
perfect
brand
sense.
name,
Yeah.
and you can make your own cola, but you can't call it Coca-Cola.
Makes
So
sense.
it's just brand name.
I think we should
the
just clip out that description because there's so much confusion. I see so much controversy.
Right.
It's just like the best description ever. The way you just laid that out is fantastic. So yeah.
Yeah. And the owner tried to file for trade protections in 2005 when she tried to sue a St. Louis area practitioner for starting her own Microlocks brand. But the case was not very successful because Sister Locks did not qualify for trade protections.
Oh, because that's probably really tricky.
It's not a patented technique, but it is a trademarked name. So they do control how the name is used because it's their brand name.
I know that for those types of processes like patenting and trademarking, it goes pretty deep. It's pretty specific and there's a lot of angles to it.
If you asked for my opinion,
Yeah,
is that the founder and CEO, Jan Cornwell, she was penalized by the Board of California in the 90s for illegally practicing cosmetology without a license. And so when she went to go fight that in court, what she did is she said, this is a diasporic African practice.
Right.
She has a PhD in African studies. We don't learn this in cosmetology school. And we do not do anything to learn about textured hair or any of this history of locking or any of these techniques. So since there's very little overlap, why should I?
Did she win that?
She did. And so that ended up being the reason, the actual case why natural hair care was deregulated in the state of California. But that means since she said that this was something that was public domain to our race and culture, when she went to go pursue someone else for ripping her off in 2005, the issue was she had already claimed in a court of law that this was something that was known amongst us and passed forward.
Yeah, that's such important history. And I think that is because a lot of these things are creating just general precedent, but also legal precedent and cosmetology precedents for these types of things. So that's fascinating to me. I will say, I mean, in a very similar situation here in Ohio, what I do and what a lot of locticians do ended up getting covered and thrown under that umbrella because Ohio had a huge influx of Sudanese. We had this huge influx of Sudanese, and they were practicing their traditional hair care art and on their family members, and then started going into business. And the cosmetology board tried to come in and say, hey, they tried to give the same claim. You can't do this without a license. And those guys went to court and said, no, we've been doing this for generations without an education board or a middleman that's of our art form and our culture. And so then that licensure, that deregulation, like you said, was created here in Ohio. And that's when I connected and kind of slipped in. And so you have this thing that's outside of cosmetology in a way. And then if you take artists that are crochet only, that are doing, I guess you would say, more like hippie dreadlocks, we were this other island that was even more removed. And literally I spoke with the board at that time and they were like, we don't know what to do with you guys. So we're just going to tack you onto the end of this. And here we are. So a very similar history, but you are blowing my mind. That is fascinating.
The owner of the salon that I worked at, she worked with this pro bono, I guess libertarian task force group called the Institute for Justice. And they did have a dedicated division just for what they called braiding freedom. And so they would try to compile up-to-date information about all of this stuff and then also push legislation and try to challenge in state courts. Here, they do have a braiding license now, so it didn't end up being completely deregulated, but people do have to take an online class.
I feel like that was the compromise. I feel like that was the closest they could get, and it's the same here. I know other states come that far, and it's not to be too political, but you can see the lines where braiding licensure has come online as that compromise point and what states where it hasn't. And I can look at those states and be like, this is a predominantly white state. You know what I mean? And I can see how that hasn't evolved. And I'm very curious what the future holds as well.
Definitely.
So I think my next curiosity would be, how did you feel straddling those two worlds when you started carrying both? Was that odd for you because you're one of those unique person that has your foot in both camps? I feel like even now today there's a lot of people that are very much in a binary. They're either doing your traditional hippie dreads or they're more in the curly hair categories and services. So how did you feel doing both?
I think because my disciplines are, of all the options, crochet and interlock, it was a little bit easier because in terms of crochet and interlock, so many people come to me because they've never had either done. They just say, I like your portfolio, or I like how you do my friend's hair, and I just trust you. Let's figure this out. And so I am so grateful every day for the trust that people put in me, because they really give me the freedom to make my own judgments and choices about how they like to take care of their hair. And ultimately, it just boils down to lifestyle, right? Because me, I don't get my hair done. I don't do things to my hair. And then other times, for instance, sister locks, you have to have your sister locks done every 4 to 6
Wow.
weeks. They have to be locked. And so trying to figure out something that fits well with people's lifestyle, I think, is a great collaborative effort during the consultation period, if possible. So when I start a set of blocks, I always ask them, one, how do you imagine your hair to look? But also, how do you imagine your lifestyle to be? Because if you're able to nail down those two things, I think you can have a pretty good strategy moving forward. It's not hard to straddle those two things,
Okay.
just because I know for a lot of people, they don't have experience with either.
Do you feel like, because you're straddling kind of those two camps, which obviously in an ideal world, all of those things would be in the same pot, and hopefully that's what the future looks like of lock education and being a practitioner, but it's not right now. Do you feel like your clients fall along racial or hair texture lines with those services? Or do you see flip-flopping back and forth just depending on the client?
I don't interlog straight hair. I don't at all.
Agreed.
You're gonna have to call a friend and hit up YouTube University if you want that done. Or actually, a lot of stylists in town will do that just because they don't have an experience with the crochet method. And I think it is, at least among people who specialize in textured hair, it's commonplace, and it's definitely a word of mouth suggestion that if someone has a looser curl pattern, then maybe you should interlock it. Of course, I'm a little bit of the opposite. The looser it is, the less suitable it is for interlocking.
I agree with you.
But yeah, that's one thing I don't do. But on the other hand, clients who have kinky coily hair, some of them interlock, some of them twist, and some of them end up
So
crochet.
it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a customized approach, but you do see a little bit of delineation based on what someone's coming in with, what's their texture, what's best for them. Because, and the reason I say that is I'm so fascinated by the blending. I'm so fascinated by seeing, I feel like practitioners like you are like unicorns. There's not that many of them that know the full scope, or at least the main popular services, and can perform all of them and can direct that client towards what's best for them. I definitely feel
Right.
like services can feel one-sided at times because it's just crochet, which is wonderful. But I like your approach of saying, you have this menu of options. Let's take into account your
Yeah.
texture and your lifestyle.
And even though I have several tools that I use different physical tools, I use different techniques and things like that. There are still some people that come that I just don't think are a great fit for what I do and my philosophical approach and lifestyle preferences for locks, because I love a hands-off approach. I love for my clients to only come to me when they feel like they want to. I do not love a hostage situation.
Yes.
I don't want people to feel incapacitated or that they don't
Empowered,
have agency. Yeah, disempowered is a really great word for that. I don't want this to be a hostage situation. I definitely want to focus on the most hands-off hair possible. Something that makes you feel good in the morning, that you're not spending too much time and effort on. And so for people who love a high maintenance salon lifestyle, for people who love color, for people who love tight updos and things like that, well, I refer out, definitely.
Okay.
Now I'm a licensed cosmetologist. I used my skills doing natural hair and doing things without a cosmetology license, doing locks, saving money. I went to cosmetology school, so I can do like color and things like that. but that's not my passion. The
Mm.
reason why I went to cosmetology school is because I wanted to bring the most like professional approach
Right.
to locks that some clients were looking for.
Right. Give me the down low on that about how you feel, because I'm very curious about that conversation, that space of cosmetology versus license versus no cosmetology license. And I'm not somebody that's personally offended by it at all. I find the space and the conversation, the debate fascinating because I'm most interested in the truth and what is best at the end of the day. And so,
Right.
what is your opinion now, present day, about if you think, oh, and we might get in trouble, we might get shredded? I feel like it's ideal for people to have that degree, that licensure.
I think that sometimes pursuing a license, a full blown cosmetology license, can be decently burdensome for time and also money. I went to the cash only school. It was the cheapest school in Missouri, but it wasn't what I would consider ideal. I understand what it's like. That school for me sucked.
Okay.
It was a very negative experience. I think the one big gripe that I have is that the cosmetology license is so much in one. And so many of us just want to specialize in one thing. Some people only want to do makeup. Some people, there's esthetician work that's also rolled into the
Right.
cosmetology license, even though an esthetician license is separate. Some states you can get a shampoo only license. And I think the shampoo only license, I believe in Tennessee, is 300 hours, if you can believe that, for shampooing. Some of us only want to do precision cutting. Some people love like color, and some people just love curl reforming and relaxers and jerry
Not
curls
to
and
mention the
perms.
elephant in the room about what texture are you looking to work with? Or are you looking to work
Yeah,
with all
exactly.
textures?
Some people only want to do braids. And so I think the cosmetology license being this giant
Like a
thing
catch-all.
that is Frankenstein together does students a disservice. I would love in the future to see it broken apart into a la carte pieces. So then you can take whatever you want and get certified for it.
Do you feel like you used anything from that in your work now?
It's hard to say expanding my particular experience out
Right.
to what somebody watching this podcast might think. I know that I didn't learn as much in cosmetology school, at least from a theory standpoint, as many other people would. Like I said, I still think that it was worth pursuing even in my free time. Almost all of what I do all day, every day is still just covered by braiding licenses.
Right.
So, of course, the cosmetology license is part of that. And it makes my business portable to other states
There's
in the
that
event that
too.
I ever move. Yeah. But as for you, I don't know. It doesn't
Right.
seem quote unquote needed. So,
But
it's just one of
I'm
those
very
things.
curious. It sounds like you created your own pocket where you've said, these are the services I'm doing, but let's elevate it.
I've been doing this for a decent while, and only now do I feel like I've cultivated a clientele where it brings me so much joy to just come in and see familiar faces, and there are no names on the calendar that fill me with a sense of despair. There are no
Well,
heads
can
that I
we
feel
say
like
that?
are not
Can we
working.
say that a little bit louder? Man,
Yeah, it's taken me almost a decade to cultivate that, and I'm so grateful for that every single day. I actually verbalize it as often as I can because I want to express that gratitude because it's rare. And I'm nervous to have variables coming onto my books right now.
I feel that. And I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of people that they do get their feet wet and they're seasoned enough to get to that point. It's a scary jump to make because sometimes it can feel like you're turning away abundance. But man, if you are someone that cares about your nervous system and you care about how much your energy it's taken from your daily workplace, that is worth its weight in gold. Not only to be full, which is a blessing, I know we're all grateful for that, but to know that you really enjoy everybody on that list is just chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And not everyone has
And
that.
yeah, it's exciting to see people, to ask them how their last couple months went and whatnot. I am so grateful because when you first start out, you just got to do what you got to do. Work is work. And that doesn't mean that you don't have certain boundaries or whatnot, but not everything that comes through the door may align with your
Oh, look,
passions.
there's a difference between obviously being hairdresser, cosmetologist, and loctician. We know you're spending longer amounts of time with these people. It's a deeper connection. I think anyone can
Right.
see that.
Oh, yeah. and I am so glad for it. It was quite an adjustment period. And I think, again, almost 10 years later, I think I've taken control over how I'm perceived and what relationships I cultivate.
Not to mention all the diversity of personalities and values and people. Oh my goodness. And there's no manual for that. I can say that
No.
I did my best. I did my damnedest when that came my way as well. And I think a lot of us have experienced that. And yeah, would I go back and do a lot of things differently and handle things differently? Absolutely. I would have the boundaries I have now, but I had to cultivate those over time through experience. And like I said, there's no manual for, hey, like you said, you're going to get thousands upon thousands of these requests, and who do you take and who do you not? And now you've made
Yeah.
somebody mad. And oh my goodness, just
Yeah, I think it was difficult too, because back then I don't think there was anybody in town that was working full time and specializing full time in crochet method. So I didn't have someone to play hot potato with. So I felt like an undue responsibility to try to handle everything. I think some people feel very territorial. Some people don't want other professionals in their area. They want to be the only one because, again, their business model is the hostage situation. When you empower your clients by choice, you'll naturally attract a more high quality client because they want to see you. It's not they want to get their hair done. They want
Just
you
be
to
you,
do their
right.
hair. Those are two similar but very different motivations.
I think that's absolutely spot on. And gosh, you're just touching on a journey that I think so many of us go through that I'm just now unpacking and going, what the hell happened? And looking back at a whirlwind that came my way. And I had to make that move. I had to make that move from, okay, take everyone and stretch myself so thin. And I was bringing in other people to help me just carry that load. And there was no one else around me. There wasn't. And so nowadays people could look back and be like, oh, you're gobbling up all the people or you're being selfish with this. There wasn't anybody. I was carrying a load that was too big for me personally in my state, in my area. I was handling probably 6 states worth of clientele and trying to create structure to hold and manage all of that. And then when it became clear that there were more people coming online, the transition from going from the way I was operating, just this like fight or flight, do as much as you can, to relinquishing that to other people and creating like a referral program, that was a hard transition. That's really difficult.
Right.
And people can make a lot of inferences in that transition of, oh, you don't want other people in your area. There's a journey to that too. Just because someone starts out right away, you're not going to go on my referral list the moment you announce that you're doing well. You need a little in the game. You need a little salt in the game. When I see that you're doing well and we have a good relationship, absolutely. Saying that there's an arc to that. There's a journey to that. I'm sure you've experienced that. You need to make sure that because that comes back on you. You need to make sure that who you're sending people to when you do make that transition, that they're going to do right by those people.
Sometimes it can be challenging though, because when your business model is built on using yourself and the relationship that you cultivate with a client, when you use that as the selling point and use that as the buy-in, it's really hard to duplicate. And I know from a marketing perspective, not that you think about it like, oh, from a marketing perspective,
I know.
but when some people say that's what you want because that's the thing that can't be duplicated, lightning in a bottle, that's good for the marketers out there. But the downside is the practical risk is you can't be replaced. So if I don't have something on my calendar or I have a wedding out of town, but somebody else needs their hair done for a wedding, if anything happens where I'm just generally unavailable or we just are 2 ships in the night, the issue is if they're like, hey, do you have anybody that you can refer? I'm like,
Let me
absolutely.
help you.
But then when they ask the follow-up question of, do they shampoo? Do they work in a salon rather than being home-based?
Right.
Are they a cosmetologist? Which is a question some people ask. Then the weird abstract one, are they as good as you? I'm
I
like,
know. How do I answer that?
yeah, and I'm not trying to be weird or funky about it because I'm like, I don't know the answers to a lot of these questions.
I think people that are incoming, I don't want them to have like more humility. I want them to have confidence getting in because we all start somewhere, but I need to have some grace for those of us that have been shouldering such a load for so long by ourselves. And I remember talking to someone who did marketing and business development, and they said, because they were studying the industry, not knowing a lot about it and giving me advice and financial advice and things like that. And they said, with your particular industry, the skill is scalable, the experience is not.
Yeah,
And I
Absolutely.
at first I was like, no, that's not true. It's totally scalable. And I spent the next few years of my life trying to scale the experience, which did not go well at all. And then
Yeah.
just coming back to home base and realizing, okay, like you said, the experience is me, and that person is requesting to be with me, and then sorting out,
Mhm.
okay, who can move on to someone else. Not everyone is
Correct.
for everyone. So that was a learning curve
It's
for me.
difficult to describe that to clients too, who sense sometimes that you can be overwhelmed.
Sure.
And they're like, hey, it seems like you're working a lot. Have you thought about adding chairs to the salon? Because my space was custom built for just one
Right.
single chair. Have you thought about having employees? And the thing is, I'm like, okay, but you don't want to go to them.
Exactly. Exactly.
You've got a great idea today, but you will be livid if I
Say,
force
okay,
you
now
to
you're
go with
gonna
that
see.
idea tomorrow.
And that
Yeah.
was my experience, girl, for many years. And I can honestly say I'm not being overly dramatic. Doing that in order to carry the load in my area of what I was carrying is one of the single most traumatic experiences of my life. Is
Mm,
trying to do that, exactly what you're saying. And clients are smart. They see what's going on and they can read between the lines. And then when you say, okay, you're going to see this person, how are you deciding that? How far along is that
yeah.
person's skill set? Props to you for standing your ground and just really marrying yourself to the experience that you are in and protecting that. I do that now, but I didn't do that for many years.
I think that you're incentivized to protect your space and exercise wisdom and discernment with who you onboard. But when you move your operation closer to home, when you have a detachment, if you're able to compartmentalize your work experience physically by working off site, it can feel like you can hang your apron out for the day and then just go home and ignore it if things aren't quite right, if there's just something a little off. But when you're home, you want to be more protective
Very
of that
much so.
space. Even though I operate a licensed board inspected salon or whatever, it's still my house.
Doubling back, because I
Yeah.
forgot to ask about your journey, what took you from Hawaii to Alaska, and then what took you from Alaska to Missouri?
There are so many people in Alaska from Hawaii, and there
Right.
are so many people in Hawaii from Alaska. If you are in either state and you mention that you're from the opposite place, it is not fun trivia. Nobody cares
Really?
because there's a million of you out there. So there's a huge Polynesian community in Alaska, and you can still be connected to, for people who are part of that culture, they can still be connected to their heritage. I started dating a friend's roommate who lived 7 hours away, also still in Alaska, because Alaska is the size of 3 Texases.
Right. It's huge.
Yeah. And within 3 months of us being long distance, we packed up the car and drove 4,300 miles down to Missouri because he said, do you want to live in Missouri? I'm moving. And I thought to myself, if I don't go with him, he's not going to talk to me for much longer. I don't think. And it wasn't an ultimatum. Then we got in the car and we got our passports and we drove down.
That is wild. And that's how you
Yeah.
ended up in Missouri. Wow.
Yeah, and I'd never heard of St. Louis. I don't think I could have made my career take off in the way that it did or anything like that if I was not in St. Louis specifically, just because property is so affordable and it's centrally located. So I was able to like solicit distance clients for several years when my books were still open to that type of project.
So by the time you moved to Missouri, where was your hair at? And what has your lock journey been like?
In college, I like right before classes started, I was brushing them out in trips of 2s and 3s, like I mentioned, and I just started them back home style. And then I didn't really know what to do, so I just let them go. I was just like, I guess this is my hair now.
I
And
love it.
yeah, I just kept shampooing it. I think I tried to like jab a crochet hook in it, but I didn't really at all just because I did not have the skill set for it. And it seemed like my hair was coming along very quickly on its own. Yeah, so I just let it be, just shampoo it and then rip it apart if it starts to grow together. My hair is down to my knees,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
right.
a big conversation piece. And I'm like, I don't know, you just like keep it clean and keep it ripped apart. Those are your only 2 requirements, but everything else is optional.
It really is. And there are times where in the industry, and I'm curious if you feel the same with a lot of what's out there, I feel like that low maintenance approach is being left in the dust a little bit. And so I always like to use the phrase like, let's not forget why we got into this. We got
Yeah.
into this because we wanted to do less and we wanted that carefree lifestyle, or maybe it was easiest for our texture or for our wallet. Let's not forget that. Let's not
Yeah.
that. And so I am always trying to create what is the easiest lifestyle, like you said earlier, for that client.
Yeah. I often say there's that famous little diagram of baby
I
locks,
know,
like
I know.
young phase, teenage
Yeah.
phase, mature phase, and everyone's like, where am I in the diagram? Which one am I? First, you will never know what physical stage of maturity your locks were in until you look backward on
It's
it.
hindsight
Every time you
only,
think,
right?
yeah, every time you think your locks are done, they probably aren't.
Yep.
You can only see it in pictures when you are not like actually in the middle
Mhm.
of it. But also what that chart leaves out is that the final phase of lock maturity is actually mental maturity.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so grateful that all of my
It's an
clients have gotten to
internal
that phase for mental
transformation. Yeah.
maturity. Yeah, where they don't feel like they need their hair maintained all the time, that they've made peace with their natural hair texture, its characteristics, the way it looks and behaves. And they're not chasing after a whole lot of decor, a whole lot of extensions, a whole lot of filler and things
Yeah.
like that. Because
I think it's
ultimately,
changing. I think there's a movement
yeah,
towards that right now, and I love to see it. I
yeah,
absolutely
because
love it.
people find it like high maintenance. And so you could keep up on it at first, but after a while, it just is what it is.
And
I think the biggest piece of advice I have for anyone entering any industry is ultimately to stay curious. I think that it's great that we have so many resources in order to learn from certain people, do workshops, gain mentorship and tutelage, and all sorts of things. That like professional support is very invaluable in its own right. But also, you don't only want to become a carbon copy of someone else. You don't have to just take one person's word just
I
at
like
law,
that.
and you can stay curious and find your own style, your own creativity, and your own niche. And that's what makes the work exciting and unique to you.
I love that. I think that's a great perspective, especially, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. I think that's a great perspective.
The one concern that I do see, and it's hard for new people to navigate, but also people who are seasoned in the industry as well, is that sometimes there's an apprehension around seeking education from other
Right.
stylists just because the concept of mentorship and teaching is so popular at the
It is.
moment. A lot of people feel that they are invalidated or that they are in some sort of violation of whatever, some sort of like professional code or even social
Or something
code if they take
unspoken.
a charge from someone and then are still a teacher themselves. And I think that's a really hard line to walk because I'm not aware of many educators out there that do encourage, hey, I'm actually trying to get seasoned people out here. It's okay. You don't have to feel shy. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes just having the privilege of seeing someone else's workflow, their hand posture, and so I would encourage people to just be open minded and maybe try to invest back in education or at least making connections and working alongside other people. Because I don't think, from a student perspective, that invalidates what you have to offer
I
them.
agree with you.
There is that stigma there.
Yeah, there
Like,
is.
run off with my technique, and are you going to go sell it to your people?
It's so touchy. It's so touchy. And I feel like you have a really accurate perspective on that. And I would add to it that I also feel like if you've been in the lock industry, there's almost this like you're supposed to teach. If someone you and says, hey, I'd like to get into this, will you mentor me? If you say, I'm not doing that right now, or I'm not interested in apprenticing or mentoring, oh my goodness. And it's just like
Yeah.
you've just shot their dream. You know what I mean? Or and then you're the enemy or you're gatekeeping because you're not. It is, we are not required, if we've been doing this long, we are not required to do that teaching. That's at our discretion if you want to doing. And that could come down to so many factors. It doesn't automatically mean someone is gatekeeping or withholding or it's competitive. It might just mean maybe socially they don't enjoy doing that. Maybe
Yeah.
that's not the place that they're at in their career. It's like to bring that back home of saying, because someone's been in this industry a lot and you send them a DM and say, will you teach me? If that person says no, that doesn't mean they're an asshole. It means no, they're not interested. And that can be for so many reasons. So it's just that automatic assumption I like to break down.
Yeah, people have asked me many times in the past to either teach them or to do a workshop, to have a platform or education seminar presence at hair shows, and I've declined all of them. But part of that for me comes from teaching as a separate skill set.
Right.
And I have great respect for the art of teaching. And also, I have great respect for just the art of what we do because in the grand scheme of things, being a loctician is in its like most current iteration with like modern social media and the way we do things in this current wave. It's new the way that we understand it as tool block specialists, at least. But I think that people are too eager to jump into the embodiment of what they consider a master, of having a humble position as a student, not to deride anybody who has a well-founded confidence in what they do. But for instance, in martial arts, a lot of times you don't become a master until several decades.
And there's no standardization. And that's going back to what we were talking about licensure. As typically there's a governing body or there's a standard that you can point to and say, I am here. There's no standardization.
Yeah.
There's no proprioception for where am I at? Where am I going?
I think that a lot of people jumping in nowadays are up against a lot by way of like social media and like marketing aesthetics, and then also just social proof and just public confidence, because the public wants somebody who postures themselves as a master. And that's why it feels enticing to want to run through it and run through the hoops and go through training programs and amass pieces of paper and things like that, which have value in their own right. But there are so many things now that I feel grateful when it comes through my front door. I know how to handle it, and it's only because of experience. I've experimented in the last couple of years of going to people's salons and just telling them, hey, happy for a day. So book all your problem people, book all the people that you have questions about, and we'll work on it together. I think you can almost learn anything. But and of course you have to be mindful of what's compounded by time, right? You can learn proper chopping technique at the cutting board if you're in a kitchen, but can you be blasting through every single vegetable like Bobby Flay? Probably not right away. Does Bobby Flay cut his fingers with a knife? No, he doesn't.
I know it's hard to pinpoint one thing, but what do you think is the most important thing that you learned in general from being in this industry?
One of the most important things that I've learned from being in this industry is just everything that I've learned from the people that sit in front of me. I might bring a certain knowledge or expertise just in the limited sphere of the service that I'm providing, but I have access to so many great like minds and passions and personalities where for some people that might be a risk factor and something that's very draining to their energy, especially if you're still trying to whittle down the books and figure out a group of people that are in strong alignment with your values. But there are people that can bring up different ideas and concepts. They can challenge your way of thinking. You can challenge their way of thinking. You can ask them about certain things. Like one client, I asked her just because she like works in banking at the treasury and stuff. I'm like, so how does money get crisp? Like how can someone give me a dollar bill at the bank and it's dated from 9 years ago, but still feels new?
This is all I do all day is ask people bizarre questions about their
absolutely. And people have this odd perception that I'm like wildly intelligent or intuitive or something, but it's only because I have such an unusual access to an incredible breadth of experiences. And I do want to credit myself. I do believe that I do a decent job of making sure that I'm a good listener and that I synthesize that information and things like that. But at the end of the day, none of this would be possible if I didn't have access to the clients that ultimately choose me and trust me to begin with. So,
100%.
Yeah, I think that's probably an unexpected answer to your question. But like the greatest thing that I've learned is just the totality of everything that I've even heard from
Just
behind the
the
chair.
different human experiences and walks of
Yeah.
life.
And so I feel proud about that. People in very good faith fashion talking about their experiences with marriage and quality relationships and just like the other issues like substance abuse or even their personal journeys and things like that. We helped the man get out of a cult one time.
I've been
I was
there.
like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's such a
yeah.
wild thing that I don't think people account for if you really dig in and you're really there for your clients and part of their lives.
And that can be a lot to bear because at the
It
end
can
of
be
the day,
good.
I
It can
am
be bad.
really huge introvert.
I am
You win
too.
some, you
I am
lose some.
too, which I bet most people wouldn't think about you or myself because we're both very articulate and I don't know what we want and say what we mean and all that. But I'm a crippling introvert myself. And lastly, what's on the horizon for you? What's next, personally and professionally? What are you looking forward to?
So this year, I am looking to work with sourcing agents and designers to develop a couple tools that are specific to like an identified need in the microlock extension world. So whenever I think to myself, boy, I wish this existed, and then I Google for several weeks, and those several weeks turn into months, I'm like, I can't find the tool that I need. I guess that means that I probably got to make it, huh?
That means it's your job.
Yeah, so I hope to be developing a couple specifically designed latch hooks that make microlock extensions easy. So yeah, that's what I want to look forward to like the most in terms of like new things on the horizon. And yeah, I also hope to just, I guess, continue to grow retail and continue to supply a lot of classes and teachers and things like that, bulk and wholesale, because I think that's a great resource to have domestically.
I agree. I love your approach. It's very affirming to me. This conversation has been absolutely enlightening to me. I'm absolutely blown away, and I feel like we just have a lot more we could talk about. Like there's so many things we could break down and get into. So thank you so much for your time. This is amazing. Anyone, if you are in Missouri or around Missouri, your books are closed. But maybe you could beg and plead to get an appointment with Bramble Roots, and maybe she'd let you in. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely incredible.
Oh, yeah, it was great getting to know you. And also, I just wanted to thank you and also congratulate you just on the podcast concept itself, because it's been really great listening to everybody because it makes the community feel a whole lot closer. And like you said, you realize that people like you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.